What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the neighborhood, and thanks for spending part of your day with us today. This episode is something we call the Neighborhood Watch. Welcome to the podcast where two longtime friends and sometimes a guest talk about their favorite games from the perspective of an average player. My name is Andrew Kimball.
And I'm Dylan Wren, and we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
If this happens to be your first time listening, the Neighborhood Watch is an episode format that we do once a month where we can talk about all of the games that we've been playing lately that probably won't get their own dedicated deep dive episode, but we still wanted to give them some time in the spotlight. Before we dive into the games we've been playing, though, Dylan, you brought something to my attention right before we went live and started recording, some changes to the best deal in gaming. Do you want to maybe go over that?
Yeah, I can. This is hot off the presses for us. Will be several weeks old probably by the time you hear this episode.
True, yes.
You know, maybe you hit that sweet spot of like being into gaming and gaming news, but like you don't keep up with the news or something, and now we're breaking this story to you. Or maybe you've heard about this, but here's our thoughts on it. So right before we went live,
we're not a news podcast.
Right before I went live with this, an hour before, I guess Xbox or no, Wario64, I guess, shared this news because some people started receiving some emails from Xbox. We're getting most of this from a Kotaku article. I'm sure it's up on a bunch of other places, but they were the one that I saw first. So the main bullet points here. Game Pass, the best deal in gaming, Game Pass Ultimate, is going up from $17 a month to $20 a month.
Which that part to me makes sense and is really still a pretty good deal. Like we've said, you have to play, or it would take your monthly subscription, it would have to stack like 3.5 times to equal one brand new video game. Yeah.
So it's like, it's still, as long as you're playing an average of like $3 $70 games that are available on Game Pass per year, it's cheaper. Like it is still a very good deal. And even though it is now more expensive than PS Plus Premium, I do still think that it is a better deal because it does include Microsoft's entire first-party catalog day one with the launch of Game Pass Ultimate.
On Ultimate
specifically. But I know I am kind of our resident big Xbox fanboy and I play it up a little bit, but the rest of these, like the $17 to $20 a month increase, it's like, on the one hand, it is kind of like a boil the frog, it keeps kind of creeping up. And like, I don't know how much more more up they can go and still have me paying it and claiming that it is the best deal in gaming,
Right.
We go too much higher and it's like, yeah, this is now not really a good deal.
Yeah. You one of those like subscribe when you want to play the new game kind of thing and then cancel it type
Exactly. So some of this is kind of like they've had issues where they've had different plans that have kind of been like grandfathered in. One of those is Game Pass for console, which didn't include the PC stuff or EA Play titles. That one is going away and is just swapping over to a standard plan. The big news, the big thing in my mind right now is that they have now said that the Game Pass standard tier will not include new games on day one, which has been kind of their big selling point. Their big thing was like, hey, we're going to have, like, you can play the new Call of Duty day one on Game Pass. as long as you have Game Pass. And so that part is going away now. That part is becoming a like, no, we really want you on Game Pass Ultimate because that's the only place you get to start day one.
It's like, are all these other plans just to have the illusion of choice? Because why would you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you just wanted to play old games or older games, why wouldn't you just splurge the extra $5 between standard and ultimate?
Yeah. I do think ultimately that a lot of it is because I think like Game Pass Standard was kind of like grandfathered in when they tried to get rid of Xbox Live Gold, and they just kind of came up with like and like there was Standard. And then like they had also like the Game Pass Ultimate. It was like two different things. And so I think, like you said, I think a lot of it is just sort of that illusion of choice. And they did try to get rid of a couple of things, and like the gamers TM revolted. They did try to consolidate it down into like, it's just Game Pass Standard and Game Pass Ultimate. There is no Xbox Live Gold thing. And they had to like walk that back and like give them more time to like turn that off.
Well,
So
like, they just renamed that, and they created the Xbox Game Pass Core, which is just, hey, pay for internet and we'll give you like a small library of games.
And that also is like the price for that is, I guess the annual price of that is going up $15. The monthly price of it's not changing, but if you pay for it all for like a year, it's going up from $60 to $75. I don't know. Like essentially to me, from like the business side, I'm like, okay, I understand that Microsoft wants to try to like push everybody towards Game Pass Ultimate because it is just $5 to $10 more expensive than their other tiers. And it does come with a whole lot more. And it does come with a bunch of the like value and perks. At the same time, to me, it does feel pretty bad that they are essentially like a lot of the big things that have been selling points are no longer selling. It feels like when Hulu, like you used to be able to pay for Hulu and it just didn't have ads. And it was kind of like, if you wanted to do it for free, you had to watch the ads. And then if you paid the money, you didn't have to watch the ads on Hulu. And then they changed it where it was like always just a subscription. Like you couldn't really do too much for free on it, I don't think. And the low tier subscription had ads, and then you had to pay the extra money to get the ad free subscription to Hulu, you know? And so it's like, oh, that sucks, you know?
Yeah. I think we should also mention that the day one releases are supposed to eventually come to standard. So they will still be there, just not day one. Like, I guess the first party releases will be there, just not day one.
Yeah. And this is starting in September, which you may note is right before the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 in October.
It's also right before just like, they actually have a pretty solid lineup of games based on that showcase coming down the pike. So
Avowed should be coming out in that time frame.
PC Game Pass also getting a little bit of a price increase, $2 up, and it will still be getting day one games according to Windows Central. I feel like what you were saying about Hulu, I feel like this is the marketing strategy for streaming services now across the board, and it's so that they can say, watch your favorite shows or play your favorite games starting at $10. So then your average consumer goes, man, $10, that's really cheap. Let me look into this. And then once they get into it, especially if they're not familiar with if they're not familiar with how it works or what they're looking for, then the website or whoever they're talking to can be like, well, yeah, like $10 gets you this. That's pretty good. But what you really want is like, and then that's when they can go into the upsell and eventually get people onto Ultimate. And it's like intentionally muddying the waters to confuse the average consumer in order to upsell them the maximum tier, when initially it felt like good guy Xbox was keeping things really simple while Sony was adopting this strategy. And it kind of feels recently like there's been a bit of a shift. I heard somebody talking about it as, I think it was the Friends Per Second podcast, and it was Ralph, aka Skill Up on there, said that somebody who works for Xbox had told him that like they're trying to get away from Xbox gaming and shift into Microsoft gaming. And it does kind of feel like that, where the gamers that have been in control at Xbox, like your Phil Spencers and everything, it feels like their power is slowly slipping away, and it's like that little kind of good guy, which they've always been a business, it's always been about making money, but like the reason we said Game Pass is the best deal in gaming is because it was absolutely ridiculous what that I always figured there would be price increases, and like I said, I'm still fine paying $20 a month. Like you said, as long as I'm playing a handful of new games that come to this service. Like I didn't have to pay for Lies of P last year. I didn't have to pay for Atomic Heart, which I didn't end up liking, so I was like, great. I didn't actually have to shell out money to find out that I didn't like, or that game gave me motion sickness. And so I still think it is a worthwhile service, and it's still a good deal at its current, or what it is about to be its price. But it does kind of feel like we're seeing the corporatization being more blatant, whereas they were doing a really good job over the last 5 or so years of catering to like the gamers and being on their side. And I don't know if I mean, obviously we don't know. We're just speculating on all of this. We don't have inside information in Xbox, but I'm sure it has to do with the fact that now, like you said, this is happening right before Call of Duty is coming to Game Pass. They have that leverage to be like, well, if you want to play the absolute biggest game on the planet for a deep discount, you'll still do that, because $20 a month is a lot cheaper than $70, which is base for Call of Duty, which I mean is probably that's the only version you'll get on Game Pass. I'm sure if you want any of the deluxe nonsense, it'll be an upcharge or you'll buy it outright. So but yeah, like you said, you got Call of Duty, you have the Bethesda games, you have Avowed, and then we have like some big heavy hitters coming around the corner. I mean, them making a new Fable and them making a new Gears of War that's going back to like the beginning, like the nostalgia play. Those are things that get old school Xbox gamers happy or excited. The people who were like, yeah, I used to play Xbox on the 360, but I've been with PlayStation ever since. It's like, those are the 360 games they remember, are like Fable, Gears. And so having those titles coming and being like, hey, you can play them on Game Pass starting at $10.
Yeah, like I 100% agree. You know, I think a lot of it is sort of that upsell where you get in for, cheap. I wouldn't even be I don't know, because I am not buying a new Xbox Series X, but I wouldn't be shocked if it came with like free.
Yeah, like a free 3 months
of core, and so it's like it gives you the $10, and so you're already kind of like on that level, and then you're kind of like trying to get up, or it may even come with Ultimate and like give you that taste, so you want to stay there. I don't even know.
Probably what they would do,
yeah. And like I said, I do still think it's the best deal in gaming, because $20 a month, you're still getting a huge library of games, and you're getting new games day one. Like we said, if you're playing 3-ish games a year, like it pays for itself if they're on Game Pass. And now that we are actually starting to see some Xbox releases, like we said, this year we've got Avowed, we've got the Indiana Jones game, which I'm at least going to try out. We've got
that's one that I'm glad
2.
I don't have to pay for.
Exactly. It's like, you could argue that, okay, well, some of these games, like if I did have to pay $70, I just wouldn't buy it. And that's a fair argument. That's, totally fair. But also, I definitely appreciate getting to try out and play some of these games. Even Lords of the Fallen. I think like that's a game. Like there are a lot of games on my Steam wish or my Xbox wish list that I'm like, oh, if this shows up on Game Pass, like I usually buy games on discount anyway. Like there's very few games that I'm running in there and buying at full price. And so when it pops up for full price, it's like, well, cool. Lies of P is another great example that you threw in there. So I do still think
Flintlock, which I think will have just come out by the time this episode releases. And that's one that I want to play, but I would definitely wait for like a sale if it wasn't coming to Game Pass.
Exactly. And one of the things that I'm sure we'll talk more about, but like we're doing some, like we all traded games that we want each other to play, and we're, playing those. It's nice that we kind of just were able to pick off a very extensive Game Pass list of like, hey, go check these. Andrew and Aubrey are playing Dead Space, the new Dead Space, which is on Game Pass. Fantastic deal. Like I said, though, I feel like I would be remiss if I wasn't acknowledging how much it sucks that they are kind of doing this. And some of it I do think is kind of like a holdover of they made decisions, 15 years ago where about how they were going to do things and price things. And now to me, it feels like they really wish there wasn't a cheaper option. It was just, you either have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate or you just don't. And I do feel like if they could, that would be kind of their preferred thing. But because of like how things they've offered in the past and even just how they rolled out Game Pass itself, they are stuck with these things. And so they're trying to like make certain parts of it less appealing. And anytime that you're doing that to try to push people towards the more expensive option, I think it's just kind of crummy as a,
Yeah.
Microsoft is still making money hands over fists. They're still like raking in the billions or trillions of dollars a year. They could still let you play games day one on Game Pass standard. They just want to make extra money. And so that's the point I'm making. Is it still the best deal in gaming? Yes. But also they are a corporation. They don't care about you. And they are in this to make the money. And how they do that is they want you to pay $20 a month. Which, I mean, again, to be fair, I'm sure it costs a lot of money to make all these deals and, fund all these studios. So I'm sure some of this is them trying to increase that revenue there to justify all of those things. And hopefully too, I mean, we did just see the Amazon Fire Stick news, which will be old news by the time this comes out, but they've basically like, you can just play on like it. I guess it's got a native app now on like Amazon Fire TV and Fire Stick. So like, you don't even need to buy an Xbox to do a bunch of this stuff. Like you can just pay $20 a month, like own a PlayStation, pay $20 a month, and apparently like the app on Fire Stick works really well. I haven't tried it myself because I have an Xbox, but
Right.
But from what I've heard and seen, it supposedly works pretty well. And so you can just hop in there and play a streamed cloud game directly on your TV as long as you've got a Fire Stick. So like, I think ultimately, I think that is what they are gunning for, is even if you are a PlayStation fan, they want you to be subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate for $20 a month and just play that on like your Fire Stick or stream it to your PC. Or, I'm sure if they could put like a Game Pass app streaming on PlayStation or on Switch, they would,
Oh yeah, for sure.
You can play it on your phone. So, I mean, like there's all that kind of stuff that like they are thinking about this in a much different way than PlayStation is thinking about PlayStation Plus, which I do think is going to be a net positive for them. But it is, I guess, frustrating on my end to see them doing this in kind of just like a crummy way, especially right before their biggest launch of the year. And usually like one of the big launches in gaming for the year, like Call of Duty constantly is at the top of the charts along with GTA 5 and whatever FIFA game has come out recently, So it is to like that was honestly the part that annoyed me the most, is when I saw the change was happening in September right before Call of Duty came out. I was like, if this was, they were just saying, oh, this is happening right now, or, oh, this is happening, down the road starting in 2025, I'd be like, okay. But the fact that it was like, no, our biggest release that millions of people are going to play, we're going to make it so that you probably can't play that day one unless you have Ultimate. And I was like, that's shitty.
Yeah. I mean, Xbox has been in last place, quote unquote, in the like console race for a while. And so to make up that ground, their whole marketing campaign has been like, we're the good guys. But I think now with their acquisitions and everything, and whether it's above, you know, some of our favorite good guys' heads, or whether it is them making these decisions, like they're making business decisions based on numbers, and they're like pivoting their marketing strategy now that they have this ridiculous arsenal. And the gamers who think that they're best friends with Phil Spencer are getting their feelings hurt. And I'm not saying that like that's what you're doing or what we're doing here. We're just kind of commenting on how it sucks that prices are going up, and we can see the like transparent reason why is to make more money. But
yeah,
there's a very obvious like kind of shift happening with Xbox, and that shift has caused, you know, the closure of those Bethesda studios and like the consolidation of some studios, and it's layoffs, and now it's price increases, and like they're having to just kind of rip these band-aids off to go in the direction they want to go. And ultimately we'll just kind of have to see if it works out, in the sense that, you know, that they increase their profits and are selling us a worthwhile product that we are happy enough paying these increased prices, or if they go too far and they end up pissing off their target audience and market, and maybe they're shifting because they're starting to care less about the capital G gamers because they don't need them. They now have Call of Duty and mobile gaming, and they're trying to be on your Fire Stick, and they're trying to be on your smart TV app, and so they're not trying to cater to the person with the Xbox tattoo who's bought every single deluxe console since the original Xbox anymore, who has like a Duke enshrined on his shelf. Like they're trying to cater now to families who played the Wii. You know, they're trying to crack into a different market. And I think we're in just kind of like a growing pain spot as being like fans of this industry.
Yeah.
And being kind of like the ones affected by their like moves. I mean, I listen to less gaming podcasts now than I used to, but the ones that I do listen to, just it baffles me how wrong they are about Xbox consistently. Like I listened to an older episode that I just finally caught up to, and they're like, yeah, there's no way Microsoft and Xbox are going to put Call of Duty on Game Pass. That's ridiculous. That's such a crazy idea. And I'm like, why wouldn't they? And then a week later, they're like, man, I can't believe that Xbox is putting Call of Duty on Game Pass. I'm like, that's their whole thing. It's like the gaming industry doesn't realize that Xbox is shifting away from them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a perfect point to make is that shift away from like the hardcore gamers and into just like the average gamer, you know? And because again, you know, like we have talked about it several times on the show, like the quote unquote gamer trademark, you know, capital G, hardcore gamer, however you want to refer to it as, those people make up maybe 10, if we're being generous, 20, but probably 10 or less percent of like people who own consoles and are playing video games, you know? And if we're being honest with ourselves, if you take gamers and hardcore gamers as a whole, most of them are either PC or PlayStation. And I say that as an Xbox fan. And so like Microsoft is not trying to win them over to that side, because especially with backwards compatibility, even though PlayStation has made some missteps there, like one, you know, that's the biggest reason why I'm not going to move off of Xbox pretty much, is because I have hundreds of digital games that I have acquired over the past 15 years of gaming. You know, I have digital media in both game and movie and TV show form that is tied to Xbox, and friends lists that are tied to Xbox, and, you know, all of that sort of thing. And so it's just like, yeah, I mean, like I'm there, but a lot of people, like a lot of the quote unquote hardcore, are tied to their Steam library or are tied to their PlayStation library. And so it's like those people are not going to just suddenly shift from PlayStation to Xbox or from PC to Xbox, you know? Like Xbox may become a supplemental console similar to how the PlayStation is for you and me, where it's like, yeah, I have it to play Bloodborne or I have it to play, you know, first party titles that I can't play anywhere else. But Microsoft is even saying like, yeah, we're not even that worried about that. We'd rather you just subscribe to Game Pass and stream it on your PC or stream it on, you know, like if you have a good enough PC and internet to play PC games all the time, you can just stream an Xbox first party title, you know.
You don't even have to stream it if you're on PC.
Yeah,
like
Game Pass Ultimate, they, you know, you can play it natively, download it onto to your PC, and you know, similar like with PlayStation, where it's just kind of like, yeah, your TV soon will probably just have a native Xbox app that you can play it on, you know. So that's who they're catering to, is the average people who are not keeping up with the news, who are like, $20 to play Call of Duty and then all these other games. Sure, I'll do that per month rather than just pay $70 for Call of Duty right up front, you know? And that's who they're shooting for, you know? So, and like you said, it kind of is a bummer that we're in sort of that growing pains where it's like, man, it kind of sucks that, you know, good guy Xbox says they've kind of been trying to paint themselves as making all of these business moves, which it makes sense from a business side why they're doing it. But it also is like, man, it kind of sucks that it's so blatant and obvious. And granted, like I said at the start of this, I think it came out because some emails got leaked and Wario64 was reporting on it. I'm sure if Xbox had been able to like present this how they wanted to present it, they would try to come across looking like way more good guy Xbox, but the internet is the internet. And so immediately it was, you know, only negative. And like you said, a lot of games journalism and like hardcore gamers or gamers TM are unable to talk about Xbox without just being negative. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I think about, we have a mutual friend who just bought an Xbox Series S and upgraded from his Xbox 360, that up until he bought this Series S, he had been playing games on his 360. And what did he do? I recommended he get Game Pass. He got Game Pass, and the games he played were some Halo games and Titanfall 2.
Yep.
And it's like, that's what Xbox wants. They want you to get in the door however you can, whether it's their cheaper console, whether it's their Fire Stick app, whatever. And then when you get in, they want to have some games for you to play, whether they're like older games from your nostalgic days, whether they're like the new version of that older series, or some games you've heard about. Like our friend, if he was interested in Assassin's Creed, could go on Game Pass and play Origins, Odyssey,
I think
Valhalla
still there too.
Yeah, like all the new RPG ones are on there. And so it's like, especially for that side of the gamer audience, that
which
like
makes
Xbox
up a majority again.
Exactly. Yeah, Xbox it's like a no-brainer. You know, you get a cheaper entry point and then a subscription to Game Pass to play the like few games a year that you want to play. Like,
well, it's similar, I guess, that in terms of like, I think about Apple, where Apple is selling their $3,500 glasses or whatever, VR, like AR glasses. They're selling them to the hardcore Apple fans. They're not selling them to like you and me. Similar to how they started with the iPhone, where it was like the first few iPhones were like only if you were a hardcore Apple fan. And now it is it's just, I don't want to say, I know the Android market is bigger technically.
Yeah, but it's like also more subdivided. Like Apple is
exactly.
Apple, whereas Android or Google, like you have your Samsungs, you have your like HD, like you have all the other brands competing.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, I mean, like it's kind of like now a bunch of people just have, you know, the iPhone, but it's become ubiquitous, and so Apple no longer has to cater towards their super hardcore fans because they're already in, you know? And so it's similar with Microsoft, where it's like Microsoft is no longer having to shoot for that like less than 10% vocal minority gamers TM, you know? They are just kind of recognizing like, hey, a majority of gamers play on mobile, and a majority of gamers do not play every new release when it comes out. And so they are much more like our friend who hasn't played a new Halo game since, I guess, Reach would have been the newest one he could have played.
Right.
And so there've been at least 3 Halo games that have come out since then that he can now play. And, you know, he's probably thrilled with that. So it's just kind of like, yeah, that is the average gamer. And that is who Microsoft is catering towards, because there are a whole, like, if you can capture that market is way bigger than the PlayStation market, you know? If you can become ubiquitous with gaming for gamers, small G gamers, you're going to have a ton more people coming over to Microsoft gaming than PlayStation, where it's like, here's this $600 console and, you know,
$70 first party.
Yes. $70 game that, you know, will never come to PlayStation Plus because we think our first party stuff is worth more than that. So
yeah, it is interesting to kind of watch from the outside and see the like Twitter sphere of gamers implode on themselves because they can't grasp that they're not the center of the universe and that Xbox is moving on from them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, it's one of those things too, where again, most of them are PC or PlayStation, and they're like, it's like they were leading Xbox on. It's like they were leading somebody on, and that person has finally moved on and doesn't want them anymore. And they're like, but wait, no, I want you to want me. Like, why don't you want me? And they're like, well, there are plenty of other fish in the sea, so we're just going after them.
100%. Well, that was a good talk. You know, we kicked it off saying that this might be old news to you by the time you're listening to this, but I think it was worth talking about because we were kind of sharing our thoughts on like Xbox as a whole, not just this Xbox or this Game Pass price increase. So I'm glad you brought that up. It was a good topic. We potentially could have made it a full episode, but let's go ahead and dedicate a little bit of time here. Yeah, exactly. Let's dedicate a little bit of time here to some of the games we've been playing. So I think there's definitely one big one that we have not had a chance to discuss yet on the podcast. And I think if that ends up taking up the rest of the episode, that's totally fine. We can touch on some of these on another neighborhood watch. If we happen to get through it, then maybe we'll move on to some of the other games we've been playing. But Dylan, you were illin when Destiny 2, the final shape came out. So I think it's time to talk about Destiny 2.
I am always here to talk about some Destiny 2.
And this could be another like conversation that starts talking about the expansion and then it ends up blowing up into discussing the state of this ecosystem, but we'll see how it goes.
But yeah, so the final shape came out, and in my opinion, it is awesome. Now, I'll throw in the caveat that I have been playing Destiny off and on since Destiny 1 came out on the Xbox 360.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I have been there from the beginning. There have been, you know, a couple of expansions within Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 that I've kind of taken off and been playing like other stuff. But like for the most part, I have been in tune with the game and like playing it off and on. So I say that to say that there's a lot in the final shape that I don't know how it would hit had you not been like playing Destiny from the beginning.
We might find out.
Yeah. I do anticipate that eventually you might pick that up when it's on sale or something like that. And I would be interested to hear your thoughts on it, because you're coming into Destiny, like you came into Destiny 2 like a year and a half ago, was really kind of your first time kind of getting into it. And so essentially the final shape is wrapping up the storyline that started way back in Destiny 1. With like,
believe it or not, there's a storyline in Destiny.
Exactly. And so that storyline, I thought, was wrapped up very nicely. I thought there was a lot of great like tie-ups and like, wrapping things up with a nice little bow. And I loved how they did a lot of it. Characters that it's not really a big spoiler because he's been in trailers and stuff, but like Cade died a few expansions back and they brought him back for the final shape. And so Nathan Fillion is back voicing him. And, a lot of people loved just Cade in general because he was kind of like the cocky, sarcastic gunslinger.
Yeah, he had some personality.
Yeah, which not that the other characters didn't, but he was kind of like sort of like the more comedic, like taking things less seriously character, whereas a lot of the other characters were way more serious, and so he kind of like balanced everything out. And so they brought him back, and they kind of like part of the story of the expansion is you kind of find out how that happened, and you're going up against the big bad guy from that like has been sort of teased at the end of the Destiny 1 campaign. Like you get a little cutscene where you see like the pyramid ships for the first time, and over the years they eventually showed up in our galaxy in Destiny 2 a few expansions ago, and they have been progressively getting more and more. And so it's like, okay, you're fighting that big bad guy, the Witness, that you've been kind of hearing about all this time. And it's just a lot of like callbacks and nostalgia and like that kind of stuff. And so I do wonder how it hits for somebody like you who maybe doesn't have that same experience. To me, it kind of, I feel like would be like, okay, is episode 7 a good movie if you if you haven't watched episodes 1 through 6,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a very solid campaign. Like the campaign itself was very good. They did a lot. Like they were kind of experimenting with some like puzzle solving and that sort of thing. Like they added some sort of some light raid elements. Like they kind of added in some solo raid elements to the campaign, which I thought was kind of cool. Like there were some mechanics for some of the boss fights and some of the things that you had to do just to progress in the campaign that I thought were very cool. Cause I like that kind of stuff. I like it. None of it was like, oh, I have to like work really hard to solve this puzzle, or I have to look this up to figure out what I'm supposed to do. It was all explained and sort of taught to you, tutorialized throughout the campaign very well. But it was kind of like, okay, you do this and you get this buff, which allows you to damage this kind of enemy. And then they'd add like a boss encounter where it was like you had to kind of use all of the things that you had learned to progress it. So I thought that was really cool because, again, that's one of the parts of Destiny 2 that I really enjoy. They added a new subclass, which kind of sort of lets you just kind of make your own subclass from all the other ones. That's not a 100% accurate description because it's not like you have access to everything that you have in the other subclasses, but like rather than like if you like the void grenades and the lightning melee and the strand super, like you can combine pretty much you can combine all of those to use them in the prismatic subclass, which is really cool. And the new area that they've added into the game, which is inside the Traveler, I thought was really cool looking. I thought had a really awesome like aesthetic. And after like you beat the campaign, you can kind of go in and do all these little like missions and find all these little secrets in it, which I have been really enjoying, like the exploration part of it. The new raid is supposed to be pretty cool. I have not done the new raid because, as Andrew mentioned, I was sick. So I did not feel up to doing the new raid yet. The new season is also going on, which adds in some pretty cool things that I won't spoil. But it's like adding in some characters that have been talked about in Destiny's past, and it's kind of setting up like what will be happening with Destiny in the future, because it's kind of like a, hey, we beat the big bad guy, what's going to happen next sort of thing.
Right.
which is really cool to be kind of like finding out. People are a little disappointed because they moved away from like seasons and into these episodes, which are, so far has kind of just essentially been a longer season.
Right.
I don't personally mind this because I like Destiny 2 has been described as kind of like the dad MMO. I am not a dad, but it's nice to be able to just kind of like hop in, do like a couple of missions, get a cutscene, and like really that's all you need to do for the week. Like you've caught up on the story for the week, you know, like I feel like it respects my time. I feel like to do, you know, unless you're trying to do the ultimate highest tier content, you don't really have to grind. You can kind of just decide you want to do it and jump into it. And so, like if I wanted to do the new raid, I could just use the matchmaking feature and find one and jump in there and do it. I'd probably watch like a video explaining the mechanics beforehand, but it's not like you have to have perfect gear in order to do it. 9 times out of 10, if a raid fails, it's because people didn't want to learn the mechanics, not because they couldn't do enough damage. So, but yeah, I think the final shape is really good. I think it's worth buying. I think it's got like a 90 something on Metacritic or OpenCritic, which has really helped out my fantasy critic team as well. So, you know, it more than made up for my horrific loss of points by counterpicking Animal Well. So had I not done that, I would be solidly in the lead, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah, love to see it, don't you?
But yeah, so that was me kind of rambling about the final shape. Do you have what have you been doing with Destiny 2? You've jumped back in recently.
Yeah, so the final shape released, and as you might know if you checked out Dylan's excellent buyer's guide video, a lot of the other content was put on sale or kind of shuffled around how you could acquire it. And I have been kind of itching to hop back into Destiny over the last like month or so. And for me, a lot of that is just gameplay. Like the story.
Bungie.
Yeah, I get bits and pieces of the story. I recognize some characters now. I'm starting to like piece some things together. But if you asked me what is the story of Destiny or what's going on, it's like I couldn't really tell you. Like it's sci-fi wizardry stuff. It's aesthetically cool, but the game feels so great to play, and like you said, it is kind of like a dad MMO. I think where I'm at, it's still pretty easy to be like overwhelmed and not feel caught up, but that's because I just have a lot of PvE content I haven't played yet, and because there's just an overwhelming,
there's a lot of systems that it throws at you all at once,
and just like a lot of there's a quest I was trying to do to get a gun, because kind of my goal now, my focus has been to build a build based around like the stasis subclass, and so I found a build that looked cool, and I was like, all right, the gun they recommend is in this mission. I already have it in my quest log. Let me go pick it up. I could not find the stupid thing anywhere, and it's because they put it in like this timeline sub menu thing that you get through from the map. And so like that is the part that is tricky about Destiny. It's like once you pick a direction and be like, today I'm playing PvP, or today I'm doing this campaign, or today I'm, trying to get this gun. Like once you kind of decide what you want to do with your Destiny time, it's not difficult like to play and to do those things necessarily. It's just like finding the start of this campaign in a timeline chapter thing can be the tough part.
Yeah, like I do think you probably would run into this in any MMO that's been going on for 7+ years or more, where it's just like a ton of systems, a ton of things that have changed over years and years of, iteration. The new player experience of Destiny, in my opinion, is particularly kind of atrocious.
You have to have a guide, basically. Like, you were my guide to get me, like, get my feet on solid ground, and now I can kind of play on my own. But anytime I had thought about playing Destiny, because, like, when it went free to play, it was like, oh, cool. There's no excuse to not try it, except once you get into it, it's like, I don't even know how to play this game.
Yeah, like, it would really benefit from, like, an Elwyn Forest or something that is just kind of like its own subsectioned out thing that teaches you how to do the stuff and then throws you into the bigger systems. Because I was going to say too, you know, like one of the questions that I've been asked multiple times on that, you know, buyer's guide video is like, okay, I bought this campaign. How do I begin it? Where do I go to start this campaign? Because and it's one of those things too, where it's like, I don't think I can I can't go back and replay the campaigns without creating a whole new character. So I don't know 100% for sure. It's like, okay, well, that campaign starts on the moon. So there's probably a mission somewhere. If you go to the moon and look around, there's probably like a flashing thing that says, hey, this is a mission. Like you said, sometimes when you load into the game, it'll just randomly start you on a campaign mission.
Yeah.
That is like the beginning of that. And then in the quest log, there is probably like the quest, but when you're a new player, you have like 500 quests in there. So finding the right one can be difficult, you know? And so it is, I do wish there was a better way to do it. And I think it's compounded by the fact that there is a story in Destiny, but to get the first half of it, you would have to go back and play Destiny 1. And then to get the next third of it, you can't. You'd have to watch a video on YouTube because they've removed that content from the game. And then the last 2/3 of that remaining story is also no longer available because it was told during seasonal content and quest lines that are also no longer available in the game. So it's kind of like, if you wanted to just kind of play through the story and come out with like a cohesive narrative, like you could get the gist, but there would also be some pretty big gaps of like, how did we go from the Witch Queen to all of a sudden we're on Neptune and,
right,
you know, doing this thing? Like, how did that happen? Because there was a year's worth of stuff between the Witch Queen and Lightfall that told that story of how we got there. That's not included in the game anymore. So I do think that, and like, that's not unique to Destiny. I think a lot of other MMOs have progressed their story, but it is kind of, again, as a new player, I can imagine that that's got to be rough, because it's like, okay, well, I'm playing this and now it seems like there was a time jump and I don't really understand what's happened anymore. And thank God that the gameplay is so solid, because if it wasn't, I don't know how many people would actually play this game.
Yeah, no, it's a gameplay game for me first, because not only is the story so just kind of disjointed because of missing content and whatever else, but I know like it went Witch Queen, Lightfall, Final Shape, obviously, because those have kind of happened since I've been tuned in, but like the other stuff I've played so out of order, and there's no clear order of like, hey, this was first, then this. And so it's like the story that I am getting is so disjointed and out of order that it's like, I just kind of take it all as flavor. And it's like, yeah, this is an interesting, cool world. And maybe if it really like hooked me, I would go do some more like external research on it. But yeah, for me, it's gameplay, and what got me back into it, aside from just like the Final Shape reviewed really well. People are talking about Destiny again. I saw you were playing it, which, I mean, you're kind of always playing it. And I would just happen to be, I think I went to go re-download it, and I saw that Lightfall was on sale for $10. And I was like, I never played Lightfall. I heard that the like class that came with it was cool. I heard that the story stuff was pretty like pointless or short or like didn't move the plot forward, but I was like, I like the aesthetic of it, and it's $10. So I still haven't finished Witch Queen. So I picked it up, but I haven't played any of it yet. I've just like, I jumped back in. I did some of the content that they like fed me And then I found, I think I like accidentally equipped stasis for something, because normally I play like the fire.
Yeah. Well, and they made stasis free with this one. So it used to be like it was tied to the Beyond Light campaign and you had to like do all of that. Now I think you can kind of now the Beyond Light campaign and stasis are free to everybody, so they made it a whole lot easier to like like you said, accidentally equip it.
Yeah, well, I think I had done the campaign, so like I had stasis, but I think after you unlocked it, there were like some additional missions you did to go collect all of the fragments and stuff, and those are still in my quest log. But when I go to them now, it's like, you don't have to play this anymore. I'm like, then why didn't you remove it? I don't need it here. It's just confusing me. But yeah, so I had all of the fragments and stuff to actually like put a build together without having to hunt that stuff down. But I think, I like accidentally equipped it and was like, hey, this is kind of cool. Let me see, what's out there for this. And then started working on that. They also did, like you were talking about how it needs sort of a tutorial zone. They added this thing where now they'll kind of like auto equip a build for you. And every time I like went to talk to the vendor that like, I do the class stuff with, the subclass stuff with, it would like pop these things up and be like, yo, check these out. And I'm like, what is this? And then I like selected one and they're like, are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, I guess so. And then it basically like reset my stuff and like it gave me gear, like all new gear at like the level I was at. And it's essentially designed to like give you a playable character like right out of the gate without you having to like go find stuff and fiddle with things. But I feel like that's almost more confusing, because then it's just like, here you go, here it is. We didn't explain how any of it works or why we chose it or what, just here's like an auto deck essentially. Like, go play with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, I mean, to be fair, it would be tough to explain like some of that stuff, but at the same time, I do feel like if they were walking you through like, okay, here is, the arc subclass, right? And so it's like, you do a bunch of missions and you get an exotic piece of armor, and there was some kind of like explanation for like, here's what that exotic piece of armor does, so you probably want to equip this grenade or something like that, right? Because it's like you read that and then you do the thing, and then like, here's an exotic weapon that pairs really well with this because of XYZ. And so if they kind of showed you that, I feel like it would be better. And then also, I know that it is probably impossible to do because of the way that everything is disjointed. But I think if because they have a bunch of like little campaign quests that are like, 30 steps long that walk you through each of the individual campaigns. And I feel like it would almost be better to just do something, especially if people buy the Legacy Collection, to just have like here is like, you're a new player, here is the tutorial, or here is the like, here's a 140 step quest that takes you from the Beyond or the New Light semi-tutorial-y thing that isn't really that tutorial-y into Shadowkeep, and then Beyond Light, and then the Witch Queen, and then Lightfall, so that it kind of is like, this is the progression of it. And then they could maybe like sprinkle in with the timeline, like, here is a summary of the events between the Witch Queen and Lightfall that you need to know in order to be caught up, because at this point, the best example I can think of is it's kind of like you're trying to jump into like Avengers Endgame without having seen a bunch of the movies,
right?
Or watching them sort of out of order. And not that you have to watch everything in order, but I feel like it would be a little bit more confusing. Like, if you're just having fun, having a good time, you can go in to Avengers Endgame and be like, this is dope, this is a whole lot of fun,
right?
But the scene where the Captain America catches, Thor's hammer, probably going to hit a little bit less for you because you don't know all of the background behind that. I would like to see it a little bit more cleaned up, but also I kind of feel like after this year, whatever they're doing next with Destiny is going to be kind of like the reset button almost, where it's like, okay, all of that other stuff, like that matters. That's still there if you want to touch it, but we're kind of like restarting. Like we've done like the big thing here. Here is the, path forward. And if you're new, here is like this campaign is designed to teach you Destiny. Start here. We're going to keep everything in the game this time, and we're going to, do better about how we tell the story so that it's not like if you miss 3-4 months in between, you just don't know what the story is because that season's over,
Right.
Granted, I don't know. I could be, one of those 5%, 10% gamers of Destiny 2 that cares. They may have the data that's like, people don't care about the story. People are just playing the game, enjoying it, having a good time. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just pure speculation. I feel like with Destiny, because it's so obtuse, that you have to at least care about the setting and the vibe and the story a little bit. But yeah, like me. Yeah. But I like when I played WoW, I didn't really keep up with that story at all either. I just think these games struggle with telling stories, obviously, because they're so long. So I wonder, how much like Bungie has to hear from their fans and also hear from people who are like, man, this game looks cool, but it's impossible to get into. And I'm sure that they're excited about doing some sort of a restart, and maybe hopefully they've learned some lessons, and like you said, they can have a much smoother onboarding process, and hopefully they can build, like they can start a new foundation and they can build off of that in a way that like stays cohesive and makes more sense, and they don't have to like nuke content. I know like Sea of Thieves did like a massive thing where they like shrunk the file size and stuff down. I mean, is that part of why they took content out of Destiny, was because the game is just too big, or was it purely for like...
I think it was getting too big. I think I'm trying to remember when some of it was nuked. I think part of it was Destiny 2 is a cross-generational game at this point. I think some of the stuff that got nuked was like stuff that was originally on like the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, that then for some of because they nuked a bunch of that stuff, I think when the Witch Queen came out, maybe even before.
I think it was before that. I remember hearing like the headlines, I think the last stuff.
The last thing they nuked was when Witch Queen came out.
Yeah.
They nuked the Forsaken campaign. But so some of it was, I think, cross-generational. Some of it was, I think, the way that they just programmed the game. Like WoW was kind of built from the ground up as an MMO. I'm sure Joe could tell us more about it, but like it was created sort of with that MMO sensibility in mind, more so, I think, than Destiny 2 was. Like Destiny 2 is still very much kind of been like, here's like a yearly, new release of this game almost, but it's all still within the same platform. And I think that created a whole lot of issues for them, where it was kind of like, the new Call of Duty that comes out like is its own new thing versus like, except that one that made you re-download Modern Warfare 2. But like, it's similar, I think, to the problem that Call of Duty will start having if they keep doing that kind of stuff, where it's like the file size is ballooning because you're just adding more and more stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also because you're using stuff from across 5 years, it's breaking things. Or like when you add new stuff, it's exponentially more stuff that you have to test because all of this old, does this new gun that we added, which works fine everywhere else, break something that was, base game Destiny 2, I think was kind of what was going on. There was just a lot. I think it was slowing down their production time. And we saw, World of Warcraft do something similar when they did Cataclysm. I think a big part of that was to like fix a lot of the issues that they had created for themselves initially. And so I'm interested to see what Destiny 2 does, because they've said that they're not nuking things anymore. Like they said, they're not getting rid of things, which is kind of true and kind of a lie, because they still get rid of the seasonal content every year. But
yeah, they mean like major expansion.
Yeah, the expansions, the destinations, the campaigns, those haven't gone away like some of the previous ones have. But I am interested to see, like, will this be, how are they going to hit the reset button, which is kind of what it feels like they're going towards, is like, okay, we're going outside of this, like, our solar system in the future. Is that going to be still a part of Destiny 2? Are they hitting a reset button and like doing Destiny 3, or, you know, they might just call it Destiny?
Yeah, I was just going to say, they'll probably get away from the number and call it like Destiny Infinite or something.
Yeah, like, I guess the thing that I'm interested to see is, like, will it be still in the same thing, or will it be its own new separate download that you kind of like import your character into?
Right,
or,
like, will it be like a sequel, or will it be like a new chapter in Destiny?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I do think that a lot of the issues that Destiny has are things that, like, made sense at the time 7+ years ago when they were developing Destiny 2 originally, that now no longer makes sense because of what Destiny 2 is. Because even, like, they were developing Destiny 2 similar to like how Destiny 1 worked. Well, Destiny 1 is completely different from how Destiny 2 is now. And so, you know, I think a lot of the issues that they've created for themselves could be fixed if they just kind of hit a reset button and did something new, and they could start fresh, onboard new people. Kind of the point of the story that we're at, we could progress without, like, you could reintroduce everything. Like, you could kind of get away with like a quick cutscene of like, here is what has happened.
Right.
But we are at the point where it's starting fresh, and you know.
Yeah. When do you think we'll get that new Destiny? Because they're working on Marathon, right? So I assume Marathon comes out first.
Theoretically. I don't know how big the team at Bungie is. I don't know if like the Destiny team is working on Marathon, or if that's a separate team.
I still imagine that it releases ahead of time, just because like they're already marketing it and stuff.
Yeah. Well, we haven't seen anything on it in a while, and I feel like I heard that there were maybe some like rumblings that it was a lot further out than we thought.
Having some issues, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know with that. Like, we're still kind of like, they haven't said a whole lot about what their next steps are. Like, we know that there's like a year's worth of content kind of planned out, and they've said that they're going to talk a lot more about like what comes next in the coming months. But like right now they're focused on like this first episode and like making sure the final shape is out and running, you know? So we'll probably hear more about it. I mean, I don't necessarily think that there's like a Destiny 3 as like the yearly expansion next year.
No,
you know?
No.
But I wouldn't be shocked if it's closer than we think it is in a lot of ways. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe just did some episodes for like another 6 months or so, and then released like Destiny Infinite or whatever, like January 2026 or something like that, you know? Or like
2026,
2025. Yeah.
Oh, right. Because, yeah, they're doing all their episodes. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, because like right now we've got episodes up through June 2025. And so I wouldn't be shocked if they did like another episode or two that ended December-ish, January-ish, and that was kind of like the new,
like leading
like,
into,
yeah, like here is the story of how we are getting to this other galaxy or this other, you know, like we're taking the fight to the darkness in this other place so that we can get rid of, we can erase all of the old Destiny 2 stuff, start fresh, and have a fresh new experience on these other alien worlds that are not Venus and Mars and the moon and, you know, Earth. So, because we can kind of just be like, boom, here we go. It wouldn't shock me if that is a year to 2 out,
Nice.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that they're like updating the engine at all.
Right.
Maybe a little bit, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think it did get an update, so.
Well, we will wait and see.
Yep.
Nice. Well, this has been the Xbox and Destiny special, so...
Yeah. There is another game, a huge one that we did not talk about, and that is because we will be doing just a full episode on Shadow of the Erdtree. So if you're like, these are the FromSoft guys, and they talk about Shadow of the Erdtree, that's why. It'll be like we've got a recording date scheduled for like a deep dive spoiler cast about our thoughts on Shadow of the Erdtree. We have both beaten it though.
Yes, we're going to give that one its proper due. So cool. Well, yeah, that's been a really fun episode, really good conversation. I like that we kind of got to dive a little deeper and geek out a little bit more about just a couple topics rather than surface level on a bunch. But moving out of our Destiny 2 conversation, what's going on housekeeping wise? I guess I'll throw it to you first for the YouTube side of things.
So I believe when this comes out, we will have recently had like a Fantasy Critic update.
Yes.
Come out on our YouTube channel. So Fantasy Critic is a fun little game that we play every year with some of our friends in podcasting. And so at the start of the year, we drafted a bunch of games, trying to, have the highest scores, on Open Critic when they come out. And so we did like a little update check-in now that all of the like Summer Games Fest and conferences and like press conferences and stuff from like the big 3 are over. So we have kind of like a short version of some updates on YouTube if you want to, look at that. And then if you like that or you're interested in hearing our thoughts on like some of the cool stuff we saw at Summer Games Fest and the big press conferences, or if you just are interested in our
League.
Well, I guess that was a podcast episode too. So unless you just skip that podcast episode, there's a video with a bunch of trailers.
Yeah.
If you want to see what some of those games look like in action up on our YouTube as well.
And see our smiling faces. We're not on the camera very often, but for that one, webcams were on. So,
Yeah. I can't attest to the audio quality yet, but hopefully it'll be good. But yeah, so that's there. And I think we've got a video on Spiritfarer coming out soon-ish.
Yeah, that one's planned.
Either later this week or
right,
sometime in the next like week and a half or so, depending on when this episode comes out. So
yeah, nice.
So if you're interested in Spiritfarer, I think Aubrey is doing like a little audio or a what's it called? Video essay.
Yeah, right.
Thing.
You said audio and threw me off.
I said audio essay. It threw me off too, man. So yeah, I think she's doing a little video essay on Spiritfarer. So that'd be cool to check out.
Yeah, YouTube stuff going well over there. I'm pretty happy, pretty proud of some of the recent offerings that we put up at the time of recording this, and I'm excited about the things we've got going up in the future. As far as the podcast, like we've said, you either already heard our Elden Ring or it will be our next episode, Shadow of the Erdtree. But we also have some other additional fun topics and episodes on games coming down the pike. Dylan mentioned it a little earlier, if you were paying attention, that we have kind of a game swap concept that we are actively working on that will be an episode in the future. So we've got some fun ideas, some stuff that we put on the schedule that I'm very excited to actually sit down and record and get out there for you all to hear. So looking forward to the future of the podcast. If you enjoy our episodes, or if you enjoy our podcast, go ahead and leave us a rating or a review on your podcasting app of choice. I know Apple and Spotify allow you to do it, but I'm not 100% sure about some of the other ones. But if it does, we would greatly appreciate it. Helps us out a lot with those platforms and how they promote content that's completely out of our control. And if you want to come hang out with us, join our Discord. There is a link in the description of every episode, and we have a channel about our Fantasy Critic League if you want to keep up with it there. We have channels where we talk about movies and what we've been playing, music, all sorts of stuff in there. So if you want to come hang out with us and members of our community and people who you've heard on the show, that would be the best place to do it. You can hop in there and let us know if you like these 50-50 split topic and one game kind of neighborhood watches.
We had some other stuff, but we just didn't get to it today.
Yeah, exactly. We have some other games that we will touch on in the future, but this is a good conversation. So,
yep.
Awesome. Well, with all that being said, that'll do it for this episode of the Neighborhood Watch. Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we will catch you on the next one. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Friendly Neighborhood Gamers podcast. If so, we would greatly appreciate your help in growing the show and the community by giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other podcasting app that allows it.
We also have some great videos on our YouTube channel, including reviews, rankings, and other topics. We would really appreciate you checking it out. And if you want to keep up with everything going on in the neighborhood, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to jump in our Discord server.
We hope to see you there. Links for everything are in the podcast description. Thanks again for listening, and remember,
stay friendly, gamers.